I prepared this Hugging Face space that shows like all the different ways that you can build like a chatbot with Gradio, and for different cases of where your model is running, like whether it's like running on a separate API server, whether it's running locally. So I can show you, like this is like
And
the
you can share that
sever.
space with us so people
Yeah,
can play around with it as well.
yeah. I posted it in my hugging in the don't switch. I put it in the
Discord.
office hours. Yeah, in the Discord. I
Oh,
put it
fantastic.
here.
Great.
Yeah. So if people want to follow along, they can go here. But yeah, so this is like a chat bot. Like how do you do a for loop in Python, and it'll should stream. So this is like, yeah, like a ChatGPT UI. In your right here. And then there's like functionalities for like retrying that, undoing it, clearing the whole chat. But yeah, so like this is like a a full UI that you could use to build like an app around your LLM, right? And
Mm.
this is the code that goes into it, right? So as you can see, it's only 50 lines of code. So it's not, and it's all Python. So yeah, it's pretty quick to get started. Yeah, so in this case, this is like interfacing with, it's using the Hugging Face like inference API to query the LLM, but I'll show you guys an example with transformers, like if it's running locally before you deploy it. But yeah, basically what this is doing, it's creating, a Gradio chat interface. So this is like a one-line UI for your LLM. And in order to implement one, all you need is this function here, respond. So respond takes it takes basically two parameters at minimum. The first parameter is like the current message that was typed in the text box. And then the other message or the other parameter is like the list of all previous messages. And they're, right now we don't support the OpenAI format. We support, we have like they're passing us like a list of tuples, but we're working on supporting the OpenAI message format shortly, and probably like about the next 2 weeks or so. But yeah, so you just, create, format the history, and then you just feed it to your API, and then you just yield each successive token. You append it to the response, and then that's how like it's just like a simple for loop, and that's how you get like the streaming that you see here. Yeah, so like this tracks like all of like the message history and all that stuff. So yeah, so it's like once you have your model trained, if you wanted to share it with someone, create a UI around it, you can do it in about you know 50-ish lines of Python.
That's super cool. And
Yeah.
you get to do this stuff for work?
Yeah, so a lot of what we're doing at Gradio now is making this like even easier. Like how can we like, make the chatbot better? How can we add like, more components and stuff? Like Gradio isn't just for chats, there's like everything like, like image generation models, there's like image components, video, audio,
Yeah.
3D modeling, all that stuff. Like we can build it in Gradio. So it's like all about how we can make Gradio like the easiest library for like creating any sort of AI app purely in Python with like as little code as possible, like with like as few additional concepts introduced, and stuff. Yeah. So
Well,
and this whole thing is built in Gradio too, which is cool. So this demo, this is a Gradio demo. So yeah, there's like a code component. There's like all the stuff tabs. You can create like pretty complex stuff like with just Gradio. So.
awesome. And I actually shared earlier in the Discord a tutorial you did on a YouTube tutorial on multimodal chatbot stuff as well, which is
Yes. Yeah, exactly. If there's, I can show, yeah, some multimodal stuff. If there's questions around that, I can show how you do that.
I think it
Yeah, with Gradient.
could be fun to get to that. We've got a bunch of questions, and two of them, which people have upvoted a lot, was going to be pretty much my first question. Also, they revolve around the people have mentioned Streamlit and Shiny in terms of comparisons. There's Mike. I mean, a more general question is around the competitive landscape, because we do have Shiny R, and Shiny can be used from Python. We've got Streamlit. We've got, I think, Dash, and people do things with Voila from notebooks, and people can like build stuff from the ground up using Flask relatively straightforwardly these days. So I'm wondering, perhaps you could tell us a bit about the landscape, and why people would choose Gradio.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think like all tools are great. Like I'm not here to say that, whatever, like I'm not here to bash any other library that makes it really easy to build a UI. I will talk about like some of the things that we think are one of the things that or some of the things that make Gradio really nice. One is just that it's like built for like AI first. So there's like a lot of like really like high level abstractions that make it really easy to build the kind of things that as a ML researcher, like AI um, AI ML engineer, like that you would want to do. So, the first thing is the sort of like this chat interface, right? So it's like, one line full chat UI with like all these different like messaging abilities. There's like the ability to, um, it's not shown here, but you could actually make it so that you can like upvote and downvote like messages. Like, there's like all these things that you would want to do for chats. Like Gradio makes it really easy to do that. So I think like that's one of like the things that makes Gradio really great. It's just like it's designed for like AI first. Some of the other things that I think Gradio like is really good at is the API, like the built-in API usage. So let's say let's say like this is an example where you have this is all transformers code, right? So this is a like the same sort of chat, but it's built with transformers is running locally, right? So now you have a UI, right? But let's say that you also wanted to use this model like as an API, right? Because you wanted to, use it like elsewhere. You like, you want to like, just use it via API. You don't want to use it via the UI. Gradio comes with a built-in API. So if you didn't see that, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's this use via API. And then this is like there's like a Gradio client library that comes installed with Gradio. And this shows how you could just, kind of query like the chat the chat with with Gradio, and then you get like a full API. And it's not just for like these kind of chat applications. For any Gradio application gets like a built-in API that you can use from anywhere. And then some of like the other cool stuff about Gradio is that like the integration with Hugging Face is quite nice. So if you have a Gradio demo that runs on Hugging Face and uses PyTorch, you can use this thing called Zero GPU, which is like a shared sort of GPU cluster, and it's free if you're like a Hugging Face Pro subscriber. So this demo that's running on it's running a transformers model locally on this computer. Like I'm not paying for the GPU right now. So if you have like you want to deploy your model that needs a GPU, you can use Gradio and Hugging Face to do it without paying for the GPU. So that's like another cool thing about Gradio. But yeah, and I think we're making Gradio better every day. But those are like some of like the three things that I think make it useful, particularly for like this like AI like use case.
Absolutely. I'm glad you highlighted the integrations with Hugging Face, because that's one of the big value props for me. I mean, Hugging Face is such a wild space for me, in all honesty. Like the models and data sets that come out all the time, it's so much fun to explore. And the fact that it integrates so nicely with Gradio is a huge part of the value prop. So that's super cool. There is a related question. Someone's interested in learning Gradio and migrating from Streamlit. So I don't know whether you have any thoughts upon what that process is like, or any advice you'd give there.
Yeah, we don't have like a dedicated like migration guide on the docs or anything. I think it's very similar to Streamlit in the sense that the UI is declared. In this case, it might be a little bit clearer. This is using like a different sort of Gradio API called the Blocks API, and you can see that the UI is like declared like it's like the UI is like a declarative UI API, right? So like the UI is rendered like how you see it here, right? First it's like a markdown that shows the title, then the chatbot, then the text box, right? So it's very similar to Streamlit. It's very declarative. Though the one difference is that like in the way that Gradio knows when to run your Python function, you have to tell it like, when one thing changes, run this function. So that's what's happening here. Like when someone submits a prompt, run the respond function with these inputs. That's like the one difference with Streamlit. You have to be a little bit more like imperative, I guess, with the reactivity. But the benefit of that is that you get that's how we know how to build the API for you. And the other sort of benefit of that is like Gradio only updates the things that you tell it to, so that it actually helps with performance as well. And yeah, like Gradio, you know, if you ever go on Reddit or whatever Hacker News, you hear people talk about Gradio, they'll say like, oh, it's only for like, you know, these sort of like demo toy use cases. That's something we're trying to like push against a little bit, because you could serve like a lot of traffic from a Gradio UI. You know, like the LLM leaderboard, for example, built entirely on Gradio. They handle something like, it's something crazy. I think it's like several thousand, tens of thousands of requests a day with like a Gradio server. So yeah, like Gradio is actually pretty performant. So yeah, so that's sort of like the main difference. You have to be a little bit more imperative with the reactivity, but apart from that, they're similar in terms of like the UI like design philosophy, I would say.
Yeah, cool. The example you showed had streaming components, and Ruben has a great question. Does it work with streaming out of the box?
Yes. So basically, like you can stream anything, not just text. And the way you do that is just from within the function that you tell Gradio to run. You just implement a generator. So that, and then Gradio will just know to just stream that function, like the contents to the UI. So yeah, it's not just text. You could do it for like a diffusion model. That's something we've seen a lot. Like people like stream the results of the diffusion model, so you can see like the image go from like white noise to like the actual image at the end. It's like a pretty slick UI. Yes, you could do that with yeah, with like images in that case. You could also stream from your webcam and stuff like that. So if you're doing like an audio streaming demo, like with Whisper or something, like you could do that as well. You could like stream to the server and back.
That's super cool. Kit has a great question. Firstly, Kit says, first, bravo, and thanks for the great work. You really nailed the core use cases. Could you take us, this is nice, could you take us briefly through the Gradio repository, outline the moving parts of the code, telling us roughly how it works?
Yeah. Yeah.
Perhaps tell us where contributions make sense to you, what's needed, where it's going. So yeah, that type of overview could be super cool.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. So yeah, so Gradio, it's a little bit different from other sort of Python like open source packages, just because there's like a big JavaScript component. But yeah, basically the way that the library is laid out, it's like two main directories that as a newcomer you would want to familiarize yourself with. The first is this Gradio directory, which that's where all the Python code lives. And that's like all the source code for like the components. So like the Gradio text box, Gradio image component, all that stuff, as well as like the FastAPI server, like all that stuff is in here. I can go into that in a second. And then also like the JavaScript is the other main half of it, right? And then the third component is the client that I can talk to about later. I can show, we're going to 1.0 the clients in about 2 weeks. So we can talk about that later if people have questions about the clients. But yeah, so this is like, like the Gradio sort of source code, right? So, there's like a CLI for developing like custom components and stuff. That's like the other cool thing with Gradio. You can like create completely new components that work the same as like any core component. So that's what this CLI is doing. But most of the logic goes here. And so like these are all the Gradio components, so like the checkbox, the code, all that stuff. And then I could show maybe like the image, for example. The image is probably one of the most popular components. This is kind of like how a component looks like. These are like all the defense or all the events that are defined for a component. So you can stream an image, you can like upload an image. When you change an image, like that can trigger an event. And these are like the constructors and stuff. And like the two main methods that all components implement are like this pre-process function that basically that takes the data from the server and that kind of puts it into like a Python friendly format. So in the case of image, you can select to receive an image from the server, or like from the front end, I mean, as like a NumPy array, a PIL image, or a file path, right? So this is kind of what handles that logic. And then the post process does the opposite, right? So like if you want to update an image, you can return like a NumPy array, a PIL image, or a file path. And then Gradio will turn that into something that the UI can display. So those are like the two main methods that every component has. And then like the constructor obviously has like all the constructors and stuff. so that's sort of like how all the components are defined on the back end. And then, the other half of the coin is like in the JavaScript, right? So Gradio is built with Svelte on the front end, which is actually pretty easy to learn. I didn't have a lot of experience with it when I started working on Gradio, but I feel pretty, after a couple of days, you kind of get up to speed. But yeah, so this is like how the checkbox is implemented in Gradio, right? So JS checkbox, and then this is like when all the events are dispatched. So whenever you see like Gradio.dispatch change, that's when like the change event of the checkbox is triggered, and that's when like all their Python function will run, basically. So that's kind of like a high level of how everything works. I can go into a little bit more detail, but I'd rather cover like a little bit more high level stuff. We don't go into like all the weeds here because to build a demo you don't have to know all this stuff. But yeah, and then like there was one more thing about like contributing. Basically, like you could contribute to any sort of issue would be welcome. There's like a lot of like pretty much like any issue would be good. Like some are sort of backend issues, and we try to label those as like being a backend issue. This could be like a good example here, right? So this adding like a delete event to the file component. So this would cover both the back end and the front end. But yeah, there's like lots of issues that we're having a hard time doing everything that we want to do. So if you want to help out, just comment on the issue, like, hey, I'd like to work on this, and then it's yours.
Very cool, and it's great to see the good first issue label as well. Super useful. That was awesome, Freddy. We've and if later on near the end we want to get deeper in the weeds with this type of stuff, we can. But I do like keeping it a high level. We do have a question around multimodality. So anonymous attendee asks, what are some of the cool features that Gradio supports for audio and multimodal? Is there only turn-based, or is there streaming there too?
Yeah,
and then he says they will be needed for future GPT-4o model-like UX.
Yes. So yeah, the GPT-4o thing is something that we're working on now, how to like make that really slick. But yeah, like for like multimodal, like chatbot kind of thing, like Gradio has a couple of good components for that. So the first thing I'll do is show you the multimodal text box. So Gradio has like this multimodal text box here. So you could use it to sort of send both text and attachments to any demo, particularly but it works good for like chatbots and stuff. So you can like attach images or any kind of file, and then you can like say like like what's in this image or something. Right. So that's sort of like just like a multimodal text box. So that's what this component is. But obviously it's really cool when you combine that with a chatbot. So I'll show you what that looks like now. So multimodal, I think it's multimodal chatbot. Chatbot multimodal. Yes. So this is like it's not interfacing with an LLM, so the response will be like really, really silly, but like, what do you think of this? Yeah, that's cool. And then this is what I was talking about earlier. You can like define like upvote, downvote. Thank you. But yeah, so this is like how you can build like a multimodal chat with Gradio, right? There's this multimodal chatbot text box component, and then you can I'll show you the code now. It's pretty similar to the other ones. You you define a text box. And then you can say, sorry, let me move this out of the way. You can say like what kind of you want to accept images or or what, and then when you submit something to this text box, run this function, and then that'll run this function here. So that'll add it to the history, and it'll also clear the multimodal text box. And then in this case, it always responds with that's cool. So that's why I asked what I thought, because I knew what the answer would be. But yeah, so this is I'll ping this. I'll put this in the chat. This is or in the Discord. So multimodal chat. And then also, if you want to write even less code, you can make the chat interface multimodal as well with just one parameter. I think. Oh no, it's broken. Okay, I will. I don't know what's going on there, but basically I'll get this up and running. Yeah, basically if you want to have a multimodal chat interface, all you have to do is set multimodal true, and that'll create the same sort of chat UI as you have here, but it'll let you upload like files in this text box as well. And then it'll, display everything and all that stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I'll put this in the Discord as well, and then I will unbreak it. Okay.
Sweet. Thanks, Freddie. Got a great question from Andrew Grangard. Should I ship Gradio-based API or maybe apps to production?
Yes. I mean, I think it depends on, exactly, what how heavy it is that the processing that the Gradio server is going to be doing. But yeah, I would say like you can ship like very performant Gradio demos that handle like a lot of traffic. And yeah, and we also have a guide around how to do that. So I will share that here.
That's cool, because there's another question, which is Gradio meant for enterprise commercial use? Any tips on deployment and advanced usage tips for Gradio for production purposes?
Yeah, yes, I will. Yes. Where is it? Maximum. Here we go. Set up a demo for maximum performance. Yes. So let me put this. Tips for Gradio's max performance. Sorry, let me okay, I'll like answer the question a little bit more. But yeah, I think Gradio can definitely handle like a lot of like it can definitely handle a production use case. If you're running like a very heavy, like GPU intensive task, Gradio has like a built-in queuing mechanism to try to like handle that load for you. So you can make it such that like, or you can control the amount of concurrency for that task so that like you don't run out of GPU memory, for example, or that you don't the server doesn't like crash or slow down or anything like that. So there's like a lot of tricks around that, around how you can do that. And also like the other pattern that we see work really well is to, you can spin up a lot of like these like independent Gradio servers, and then just like load balance between them, and that works pretty well for like a lot of use cases as well. But yeah, I think like like Dolly was created with like a Gradio UI. Like I said, the LLM leaderboard runs like with Gradio, so you can definitely handle like a lot of traffic.
Awesome. So we have a few more specific questions. So Shrita asks, in Gradio window, the LLM chat Gradio.chatbot, is it possible to display some buttons? For example, predefined topics or questions to initiate the chat with the LLM.
Yes. So not like yes. Gradio has this thing called examples. So I'll show you guys a like a Mistral, this one. You can see here, you hear some examples. So these are some like sample prompts that you can use to like sort of like pre-fill, and like I think this is kind of what you're getting at. Like, how can you like sort of like give my users like an idea of how to use this? So you can, Gradio has this concept of examples, which are basically just like what are some example input components that I can let my users like try in my UI, right? And it doesn't just work for chat. Like any Gradio demo has this concept of examples. There's an examples component that you can use to like seed the demo with data. And like in the case of multimodal, like you could like, provide sample prompts and images and stuff like that. And then Gradio can also like cache the outputs of these examples. So like, if you click them, like the answer will also show up as well. So like that can help in the case of like people, you want people to know how your model behaves without actually using any of your GPU resources, for example, like without actually running anything. You can like tell Gradio to cache the results of these. So I can show you what that looks like in the code. So in this case, it's just like an extra parameter here to the chat interface. It's just examples here. And then you just provide your examples. And in this case, we're not caching the examples, but you can just set this to true, and that'll do like the caching mechanism that I was talking about earlier. Yeah. So I think that's kind of what the, hopefully that answers the question. Let me know in the chat if you had something else in mind. But yeah, you can definitely provide some sample inputs for your users, so that they have an idea of how to use your Gradio app.
Very cool. We've got a nice question from Lorian as well. Lorian's more comfortable for UI with JavaScript. So what are the current disadvantages of relying on the Gradio JS client and custom, for example, Svelte front-end components?
Yeah, so the JavaScript client is, with like, two of the engineers on the team, Keith and Hannah, have been working pretty diligently and hard to get the JavaScript client ready for 1.0 in about 2 weeks, or like, yeah, I think like 10 days. So June 6th is the 1.0 release of the client. So by then, like, the JavaScript client will be pretty solid. And we've already seen like a lot of like really cool community demos being built with the JavaScript client of like, like, you don't want to use the Gradio UI, you want to use your own UI, but you want to like use a model that's hosted on a Hugging Face space. You can like basically put that model in your UI with the JavaScript client, like that it can bridge the gap between your UI and the Hugging Face hub. So we've seen a lot of cool demos built with that. Yeah, like in the past, JavaScript client was a little bit like rough around the edges, but we've completely revamped it. It's a lot easier to use. So I'll say definitely try it out, and let us know if you run into any issues. But from what I've played around with it, it's pretty slick. And then like the second part about the question, like like what if you want to use like your own Svelte code? Like certainly you can definitely do that, but I think like the cool thing about Gradio is that it sort of, we did all the hard work around defining a component library, so you don't have to, right? Like even if you're like a really good like front end wizard, like I always find it really annoying to like create like a good checkbox from scratch, or like messing around with like the flex box and like making sure like the UI looks actually really good and like things are like in proper rows and columns and all that stuff, and like making sure that the height properly fills in the entire content of the page. Like that kind of stuff is kind of annoying for me. Gradio can handle that for you. So I think like Gradio is like a really good place to start. And then if you always wanted to do something a little bit more custom, you can create your own Gradio component. So that's something that we shipped a couple months ago. But let me go back to the app. Yeah, but we have this like custom component gallery. So these are like, like let's say you want to use like something, like you want to do something that we don't have support for in Gradio Core yet. You can create one of these like components, right? So like this one's actually like really cool. It's like this like rerun.io. Like someone created like a rerun.io viewer, which is like this like multimodal data viewer, like entirely in Gradio. So that's like really cool, right? So like if like Gradio can do like a lot of the boring stuff, and then for the fun stuff, you could just write some minimal Svelte to do the cool stuff you want to do, and just plug it into the rest of the Gradio, like the Gradio demo, right? And like, people can use this from Python, which is like pretty incredible. So yeah, so that's something that like if you're comfortable with front end, like Gradio might still be useful for you in that regard. I think you got muted, Hugo. Sorry.
This is a really cool gallery, man. I was just wondering if maybe you can show us a few more of them by any chance.
Oh yeah, for sure. So some of the cool ones, so like the PDF one, so I really like it because I made it. But there's like this PDF component. So like let's say you have like a question answering like LLM, right? That like like document QA, like you could use this PDF component to like like answer questions about your your PDF, right? So supports multiple pages and stuff like that, and like it'll render the PDF completely like in the browser for you. And then some of the cool ones are
Just quickly, for the
like,
PDF one, I'm able to plug that into any model.
yeah, I mean like as if your model accepts a PDF, like you could
Yeah,
just
of course,
plug that
yeah.
into,
Yep.
yeah, for sure. Like you'll get a PDF like in the Python, and then just feed that to your model. Yeah, and like these things are like, I think it's really cool. Like you just like pip install Gradio PDF, and then you have a PDF component that you can just place like in your Gradio UI. So
Very cool.
yeah, and then some of the other cool stuff. So this is like really cool. Like I don't actually even know how to do this properly, but someone made like a molecule viewer in Gradio. So yeah, like I don't even know what the right input is for this, but I've seen tweets of people using it. It's really cool because it'll visualize like a molecule like completely in the Gradio, and like you can like tweak it and like change it, edit it, that kind of stuff. So if you're really into like biochemistry or that kind of stuff, like you could use like this component. Like this model, or this is really cool because it's basically like like that search box you see like in the Hugging Face hub. This is basically that as a Gradio component. So like let's say you like you want to like be able to like download like a list of models or something from the hub in your space. You could use this sort of like component to do that, and it's like has like all like the like all like the it has like the really slick autocomplete, so like it's really cool. Yeah, so there's like a lot of stuff. This one's like good for like geospatial data.
I'm a huge fan of Foley. I've been a fan of Foley for about a decade now, actually. Really
Yeah, no,
useful.
it's really cool. Yeah, so you could use this to sort of embed like any kind of map into Gradio. Yeah, so there's like there's a lot of cool stuff here, and that I think certainly like people aren't using yet. Yeah, so that's
Beautiful, beautiful stuff, Freddie. I'm really excited to go and explore this stuff a lot more myself. Someone in the Discord has written so many ideas to explore. I think the course will leave me with 500 days of homework. Which I like the 500 days. I would encourage people to not consider this homework. This doesn't even feel like work, right? This is so much fun. Anand has a great question. Would you recommend Gradio for building multiple users Gen AI apps on the cloud? And also in general, should Gen AI apps be running on a serverless architecture?
I don't know what you mean by multiple users in that question.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, certainly multiple people can use like a Gradio demo like
I
concurrently.
think that's what it like means. Like how many, I suppose, how many users would it support? Or how to
Yeah.
scale it?
Yeah, I mean, it depends a lot on, yeah, like what hardware you're using to run the Gradio server. Like I said, like you can tweak Gradio to be like you can tweak Gradio to the specs of your machine, right? Like I was talking about this thing called like the queue earlier. So like Gradio by default, like kind of queues all the incoming requests. And then by default, it'll only run like one GPU heavy thing at a time, right? So that's done because by default, you don't want to run a GPU memory. But let's say you have like a really nice GPU, like you could you could crank that up such that you run multiple of these things at a time. You can also batch requests with Gradio. So you could like handle multiple like incoming requests at a time. So that can help you build a more performant demo. But yeah, like it depends a lot on like exactly like what hardware and stuff that you have going on. You have at your disposal. Certainly, like if you want to like host your LLM in like modal, like on like Hugging Face or like replicate something like that, and then just like query from Gradio via like the API, like certainly that would work too. And in that case, like the Gradio server would be like a little bit more stateless in that regard. But yeah, like I think both patterns would work. It's just a matter of like what your budget is, what you're comfortable with, all that stuff.
Yeah, makes sense. And so we have our Discord, but like downstream Future Music, if people want to like learn more about this type of stuff or chat with the community, is there a good place for
Yeah,
people to do
yeah,
that?
for sure. So the Hugging Face Discord has a pretty big Gradio community. So there's like a Gradio. This is a Hugging Face Discord. I'll post a link in our Discord later, like the join link. But yeah, there's like this Gradio question channel. Like a lot of community members just answer each other's questions here. It's actually really cool. And we make a lot of like Gradio announcements here. And like we have like this sort of Gradioverse community channel for people to just share what they're building, what they're having trouble with and stuff like that. So I would say this is the best place for like the Gradio community. And certainly if you have like a feature request for a bug or something like that, like just follow that on the repo, and then someone will get to it for sure.
Awesome. Thanks, Freddie. Got a question from Colin. Have you seen any interesting designs for multi-agent collaboration visualizations? And Colin says, Colin's been messing around with agentic workflows, and it'd be cool to mock up dashboards quickly when tweaking interactions.
Yes, so that's like a really cool topical question. That's something that we're working on now is implementing like the agent workflow with Gradio. And like I will show you guys actually I actually built a custom component to do that, to sort of test out like the API and all that stuff. So I'll show you that now. Yeah, so this is like an LLM agent running on Transformers. So Transformers released like an agent API, so you can like kind of build an LLM agent with the Transformers library. And this is sort of like a UI for that. So like you know, show me a picture. Let's see if I could type like QCat. So I hope this. So we should see it soon, hopefully. Yes. So right. So like here you can kind of see like the chain of thought of the agent, right? So it's like, okay, I need to generate a QCat. I'll use this image generator tool, and then it shows you the tool that it used with like the prompt, and then it shows you like what the image was, right? So there's like a fully functioning like LLM, you know. If we go to the space, I can show you the code. So like I said, this is a custom component. So right now it's not part of Gradio core. But if you install this, you can use it for the time being. So yeah, so there's like an agent chatbot component. And then this is the code. So it's a little bit more involved because, you know, there's like a bunch of tabs and stuff, but at the core, it's basically what I showed earlier, where there's like a chatbot, a text box. When you submit, run this Python function. So that's how you can do the sort of the agent stuff. It works with LangChain as well, so it's not just tied to Transformers. But yeah, so yeah, definitely like agents is something that we're working on right now. It's like you can consider this like a pre-release in this custom component. We're working on adding that to Gradio core shortly. Multi-agent, certainly you could do that, but it's not like right now the Gradio chatbot like assumes like there's only two speakers. But you could like, you know, you could think of ways of like, you know, maybe like if it's like depending on the speaker, you like in your message you'd say this is whichever speaker or something like that, right? But certainly like a multi-agent chatbot could be like a really cool custom component that someone should build. So if someone, you know, wants to do it, they should do it. Like we would love to communicate that and share that. But yeah, so like the multi-agent, multi-speaker is not something that we've built yet, but the agents we're working on that should land in core shortly.
That sounds awesome. And so, Colin, that sounds like if you have the time, creating a custom component could be super cool. And let us know how you go. Would you mind putting that in the Discord as well, Freddy?
Yeah, for sure.
And it was a really cute cat as well. So
visualizing. Yes.
So Matthew Miller has a bunch of cool questions. Is there a plan to enable authentication in Hugging Face spaces that doesn't require allowing cross-site cookies? I haven't experienced this issue myself, but can't remember exactly what the issue is. It currently doesn't work for Safari mobile, for example.
Yes. Yeah, so in terms of authentication, there's like two sort of things that you could do that are a little bit more robust to the built-in Gradio authentication. So yeah, like the Gradio authentication is kind of like, you know, that's sort of like it's not really, we're thinking of things to call it that's not authentication, because it kind of gives people the wrong idea. It's not super secure, to be honest. It's just kind of like the minimal like access control you can do. But one thing that's really cool is that there's like a sign in with Hugging Face button that you can use to put it in your Gradio demo. So I'll show you a GGUF my space, I think. Sorry, let me think of a cool demo. GGU. So I don't know if you've seen this, but this is a demo that like once you have like your fine-tuned LLM, this will turn it into GGUF format so that people can run it like it's the quantized format. So this will do it all with like this Gradio demo. And part of the, you know, you can only do that with your own models. So you have to sign in to Hugging Face to do that, right? So how do you like you can do that with Gradio with like this like little button here. And it says, like it's gonna, it tells you what permissions it's gonna ask for. You can, say whether or not you want to do that or not. Yeah, so grant, and then I'll do it in my Gradio space. Cool. So yeah, so now I'm logged in to my Hugging Face account. So if we go to the code, it's just like another Gradio
Also, just quickly,
component.
for those who don't have a lot of context around GGUF as well, GGUF is what has helped me run models locally on CPUs also, and it's been a game changer, in all honesty.
Yeah. So like, like let's say you've, at the end of the course, you have a fine-tuned LLM. You want to run it on like a CPU. You want to convert it, you can convert it to GGUF. You can do that all with Gradio on the hub. So this is, I'll share this as well in the Discord. But yeah, I wanted to show you guys because of like this like login functionality here that just you can use that here and it'll use OAuth. So it won't use cookies or anything or like like the cross-site cookies. Yeah, and it's just like this, like, let me go all the way down, login button right here. So it's just like a very simple Gradio component. And then there's also additionally, you can add like Google OAuth to your demo as well. So let me see if I could find that quickly. But yeah, so there's more than, you don't have to just use the cross-site cookies. Like we've uh, we've like, sorry, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, we built like other sort of like authentication mechanisms into Gradio. So I think let me go find that OAuth here. I think it's I'll find it later. I can't find it right now. But yeah, like there's an example here of using Gradio OAuth in your or Google OAuth in your Gradio demo. So I'll show that. I'll put that in the Discord at the end. But yeah, it's certainly possible.
Cool. Got a question around, does Gradio integrate with FastAPI? I'd love to know that. But I think more generally, just how do you all at Gradio think about, the serving story?
Yeah, so Gradio is built upon FastAPI. Like Gradio is a FastAPI server. It just like serves like a very specific index.html file that has like all the Gradio front end like stuff in it, right? So the way that you can think of Gradio, it's like it'll take all of this. Basically, Gradio will take all your source code and turn that into like a JSON config, and then serve that via FastAPI to your browser, and then the browser will like run all the reactivity and stuff. And then whenever like something happens that requires Python to run, it'll send a request to the FastAPI server. The FastAPI will run it and then send it back. So that's kind of like Gradio, like at a very high level, like how the architecture works. And Gradio is basically just like a FastAPI server. So like when I shared earlier of like the API stuff, like that's just like the FastAPI server that's running it. There's nothing fancy, nothing crazy like that. So like one of the cool things about Gradio being built upon FastAPI is it's very easy to integrate it within a larger FastAPI application, right? So FastAPI has this idea of like sub applications. So you could basically mount a full Gradio UI in like a URL of like your larger FastAPI app. If you have like a larger app that does a bunch of other stuff that beyond Gradio, you can still use Gradio to like just mount it within your application. That way you don't have to deploy a whole separate server or anything like that for Gradio. It can just integrate very, very seamlessly into FastAPI. Yeah, so I could show an example of how to do that as well. So I think in the docs down here, here we go, Mount Gradio app. Ooh. Here we go. So yeah, so this is how you can like take, you have like a FastAPI app, and then you want to mount a Gradio like at the Gradio path. This is how you would do it. Yeah, so yeah, it's pretty cool. Like yeah, Gradio it's basically like everything's a wrapper now. Gradio's a wrapper on FastAPI. Basically very, very cheeky way to put it. But
awesome. DMG has a question. How can authentication and authorization be integrated into Gradio to manage user access?
Right. So basically, Gradio. So when you like, Gradio has this thing called like the request. So you can add a parameter called request, to your function, your Python function, and then you'll get like a FastAPI like request that you can like see like, you know, like who's logged in, all that kind of stuff. And then depending on that value, you can like say like, you know, like if this user is not who I think it is, just don't run the function, raise an error, that kind of thing, right? So you can use like that sort of pattern to like control like which parts of your app are accessible to which user and that kind of stuff. I think that's kind of what the question was getting at, but yeah, yeah.
Matthew Miller has another good question, and it's actually around Gradio Lite, and we haven't really talked about Gradio Lite.
Yeah.
So maybe you can give us a whirlwind tour of.
Yes. So Gradio Lite is a, you know, it's just a version of Gradio, but it'll run entirely in your browser. It's used Pyodide. So it's like serverless Gradio, basically. So that's really cool because you know, like let's say that you have like, you know, you want to like transcribe audio and like you're worried about like privacy, all that kind of thing. You could do that basically entirely in the browser using like, you know, like Whisper Lite and, you know, and Gradio Lite. So I can show, oh, sorry, here in the docs. So yeah, so you can go here to Gradio Lite. Yeah, and then this is how you basically just add this to your HTML, and then scroll down, and then you just write your Gradio application within the HTML, right? But like you're using Python, you're not using like, it's just Python, and then Powdad will run it for you, and then yeah, that's how it works. And then you can like you know, separate into multiple files if you want and stuff, but it'll run entirely in your browser. And then there's actually like some really cool demos of using Gradio Lite with transformers.js. So if you're not aware, like, or if you're not familiar, transformers.js is like the Python transformers library, but running entirely in your browser. And it supports a staggering amount of like tasks and models. It's pretty incredible actually. And then so like if you have like a Transformers JS model that you want to create a UI around, but you don't, you know, you don't want to build like a whole UI, you don't want to worry about like what component library to use, anything like that. You could just use Gradio Lite to basically run your Transformers JS model like in a nice UI in the browser. It's pretty slick. I'll try to find an example of that and put it in the Discord later.
That's incredibly cool.
Yeah.
When we're thinking like Gradio Lite, when we're thinking about, you know, Python in the browser using Pyodide in the backend, PyScript comes to mind as well. So when would you suggest people play with one or the other? Or
I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not the biggest expert in like what the state of Python in the browser is. But yeah, like so I don't know. I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, cool. Appreciate it. The initial question Matthew Miller had though was, in Gradio Lite, is it possible to use Python packages that need to make web or REST API requests? If so, are there any examples?
There's no examples off the top of my head. It is possible. There's a very specific way to do it. You can't use requests, or I think you can use requests, but also there's like in the Pyodide docs, there's like a specific section, if I recall correctly, about how to make requests correctly from within Pyodide. So I will dig that up and put it in Discord. Yeah, but it is possible.
Appreciate that, Freddy. And no promises, but my spidey sense says if you join the Hugging Face Discord and did a search for this type of question, someone else may have asked it before.
Yeah.
Seems like the type of thing people would be very interested in. Matthew Miller also has another question, which is there a way to do more advanced table like AG grid? I don't know what that means, or similar, that has more advanced native column filtering, input, output. I find the existing data frame component a bit limiting. Would be very helpful for building more advanced web apps that could be used for things like data labeling, for example.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know what AG table is. I did, like, we are sort of like, you know, like we are trying to make the data frame component better. Like it's pretty flexible, like pretty much like anything. It'll basically like visualize any kind of like pandas data frame for you. So like, even if you've like applied colors and formatting and stuff in Python, like the JavaScript will know how to display that correctly, so it'll apply the same colors and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, like it doesn't do like a lot of like high tech filtering, or like it'll sort, but it won't filter for you. Like it won't do that stuff. That would be like a great custom component if you feel motivated to do that. But you know, if you don't want to start from scratch, there is something I want to show you that's kind of like related to that, which is the leaderboard component. So this is something that we did. This is something that we built a couple weeks ago because like the Open LLM leaderboard was running all of the processing, like all of like the logic for filtering and subsetting and all that stuff in the backend. It was introducing a lot of latency. So we built this custom leaderboard component to be able to do like all the data processing entirely in the client. So it goes like a lot faster. So like it'll like filter like a lot, you know, it'll filter like very quickly, it'll add columns very quickly, all that stuff. So like the OpenLLM leaderboard is now using this custom component because it's a lot more performant. It's like, you know, like doing all like the logic on the client side now. So if you wanted to, I think it'd be really cool if you could build whatever it is that you have in mind as a custom component. And you could also file an issue so that someone else could, you know, could propose ideas of how to best do that with Gradio. But yeah, but like we are starting to think about that. We are starting to go in that direction. We just haven't gotten there yet.
Awesome. Thanks, Freddie. We've got a few minutes left, and we haven't got to all the questions, but people feel free for the ones we haven't got to. If you want to ask them in Discord, we can get to them there. I'm just interested in what you're most excited about working on at the moment. If there's anything you want to show us or tell us, what's the next 3 months or 6 months, or you know, whatever the future holds for you.
For sure. I mean, I think you know, like one of the things that I'm personally really excited about is like the agent stuff that, you know, someone asked a question about earlier. Like I'm really glad that they asked that question because like this is something that we're working on like literally last week, right? So I think that's definitely gonna hit Gradio like soon, like probably like in the next 2 weeks or so. So yeah, so basically like, you know, be ready to like, you know, build really slick like agent demos, like better integration into like all these like API providers, all that stuff like from within Gradio. So we're actively thinking about how to make like LLMs even easier with Gradio. So I think that's like one really cool thing. And then, you know, earlier someone asked about the, you know, like a GPT-4o type demo where you're like constantly talking with it, and like it streams all the data, like all the results back to you. We are thinking about how to do that with Gradio, right? So a couple of months ago, we were playing around with like WebRTC to see like how we could like basically do all the Gradio streaming for audio or video like with WebRTC. So like, you know, like and some of like the preliminary like demos that we built are like really cool. Like they, you know, they're like basically real-time machine learning, like, you know, image processing, audio processing, all within with Python. So that's really cool. So, you know, jury's on whether or not we'll use WebRTC or we'll use like some other technology. But I think like being able to like stream really quickly, you know, from your client to the Gradio server and back, I think is something really exciting that we're working on. So yeah, we definitely have that sort of GPT-4o type demo like as like a North Star that we're working on. And then like the other cool thing that's gonna hit Gradio really soon is sort of more declarative UI. So I think this is actually really cool. It's something that, oh, sorry, I don't need to do that. It's something that we're working on pretty like right now, and we're gonna release it probably next week or, you know, next week at the latest. But it's you know, we keep getting questions around like how can you create Gradio demos that are like in a way like non-deterministic, right? Like you want to have like a variable number of text boxes, you want to like have a variable number of, you know, like events and all that stuff. We're introducing this thing called gr.render, so that like, you know, like depending on this like arbitrary count variable, you can create like that many number of text boxes that function similarly to like any other Gradio text box. You can like create like click events and or like submit events for all these text boxes, and then you have like a really cool like declarative UI in Gradio. So I think it's really cool. Like I'll try to find like an example of that. Like this is like it's gonna hit Gradio like probably next week. But this is like really cool, like sort of being able to do like really like dynamic rendering of like all these different components. I think that's really exciting. So I'd say those are like the three main things that at least I'm looking forward to in the next months. But you know, the Gradio team is working a lot, right? So like I didn't, that doesn't cover the clients. The clients are super exciting too, right? So like if you want to, the hottest models like always land on Hugging Face first, and like the way to use them programmatically is the Gradio client, basically, because like you can like interface with whatever Gradio server is running that model from anywhere. So I think that's really exciting, and Gradio Lite is also super exciting. So yeah, there's a lot of exciting stuff.
Yeah, that's three incredibly exciting things, any one of which is kind of mind-blowing, to be honest. So
Yeah.
what a time to be alive. We do have one other question. Someone's wondering, the first question is, can we have an LLM that is fine-tuned with the latest Gradio docs? So I think that means maybe in the docs, or
Oh,
because maybe an LLM that
yeah.
is maintained by HF. Every time they use ChatGPT, Anthropic, any LLM, they get Gradio code that's old and deprecated.
Yeah, no, that's if you want to build it, like that would be so cool. Like we're actually talking about like doing that ourselves. Like I mean, I'm actually enrolled in this course, and the reason I enrolled in the course is because I want to do that. So but by all means, please do that before me. Like that, and I will help you. That would be really cool. Yeah, because we're seeing that like ChatGPT, all that stuff, like they're using like really old Gradio APIs, or they just hallucinate some stuff that like was never valid Gradio code. So yeah, so I would love to have a Gradio LLM that's running on the website that can, or on Discord, that people can ask questions to to unblock themselves. I think that'd be huge.
That will be so cool. Look, I'd like to thank everyone for joining. We had, around 100 people here the whole time, with virtually no drop off, which is incredible. Which is testament to how exciting everything you talked about is, Freddy. But most importantly, thank you for sharing your
Absolutely.
wisdom and everything you're doing on the edge of all of this really exciting stuff. And if anyone has any other questions, Freddy, you can be around every now and then to chat in Discord.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm on Discord pretty much all day. Like so, yeah. So feel free to
Amazing.
drop questions. Yeah, someone will answer for sure. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thanks once again, everyone. And see you in the next workshop. And thanks, Freddy, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks everyone. Really appreciated the questions.
Um, cool. Thanks so much, man. That was
Oh yeah.
really awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for the questions. I mean, I was a little worried that no one would show up because it's Memorial Day, but I'm glad people showed up and had good questions. It
There
was
were
awesome.
people tuning in from India at 4 a.m. and stuff as well. So
That's insane. Yeah, that's super exciting. Yeah, I mean, like testament to you guys as well for building such an engaging course that everyone is loving. I'm loving it.